Talking about the Renaissance era. I'm going to first start by talking about this painting on the right-hand side. This is the School of Athens, and it is located in the Apostolic Palace in the Vatican City. It's a huge fresco painting, and it shows a lot of classical Greek philosophers gathering. We have some central figures like Plato on the left and Aristotle on the right. We can see Apollo's statue, the god of music and art, on the left with Athena on the right. Those statues symbolize the division between Plato's and Aristotle and how their philosophies conflict with one another. This painting is very colorful and it creates a dynamic movement throughout the piece with a very spacious and classical setting. The Renaissance was a time of cultural, artistic, political, and economic regrowth in the European Middle Ages. It began around the 14th to 17th century and promoted classical philosophy, literature, and art. Some of the greatest thinkers, authors, scientists, and artists thrived during the Renaissance era. The Renaissance was credited with bridging the gap between the Middle Ages and modern day. Next, here on the right, we have the Alba Madonna. She's located in Washington, D.C. Now, this painting is very different from a lot of the ones that we've seen in the Renaissance era because it is painted on a round canvas, not like the rectangular ones that we usually see today. This picture is of the Virgin Mary, and she's holding child versions of Christ and John the Baptist. We can see the traditional cross that Christ is holding. And the color palette was very innovative with delicate pinks, blues, and greens to create a very holy and scenic effect. Some key features of the Renaissance were rebirth and rediscovery. There was a mass flow in visual arts such as Botticelli, Michelangelo, and Raphael. They brought new ways of thinking, and that spread northwards across Europe, and it increased trade. And trade once again spread their thinkings, and it is one of the most critical things about the Renaissance. And next we have humanism. Education was a very big driving factor of humanism, with it being taught in universities and schools, especially in Italy. This solidified the concept of humanism, spreading it worldwide. Next, we have Reformation. The church had a lot of power and it needed to be reformed. It needed a more direct relationship between the believers and God. Bibles were being mass-produced and in more languages than just Latin, like French and German. This opened a potential for more followers to learn about Christ. Next, here on the right-hand side, we have the Sistine Madonna. She's located in Dresden, Germany. Now this picture again is of the Virgin Mary and she's holding Christ as a child. But we can see that traditional Christ child effect where he doesn't look exactly like a child. He has a little bit more of a manly body with a child's-like face. Now Virgin Mary is standing in the clouds. She has flowy clothes and the curtains drawn. This shows her importance to the other characters in the painting. Now on the left we have Pope Sixtus II and he is gazing up at her, and to the right we have Saint Barbara. She's kneeling down and her face is looking downwards to the baby cherubs at the bottom. This is very traditional in Renaissance art with Christ and especially the baby cherubs. Art, architecture, and science were linked in the Renaissance, and they all had an influence on each other. Da Vinci especially incorporated scientific principles like anatomy into his work, helping him recreate the human body with extreme precision. Some scientific discoveries led to some major shifts in thinking like Galileo and Descartes. Art was characterized by realism and naturalism, striving to depict people and objects in a true-to-life life. They used techniques such as perspective, shadows, and light to add depth. Here on the left, we have the Tempio Montorio in Rome. This is located in the Church of San Pietro. This is made out of masonry marble, and it's a round temple, and it consists of a single chamber inspired by classical buildings like the Parthenon and the Temple of Vesta. We have those Greek and Roman architectures like the Doric columns above and the hemispherical dome. And on the right, we have the Vitruvian Man by Da Vinci. This was in one of his journals, and it's one of his most famous journal entries. This is a study of proportions and a mathematical study of the human body, highlighting the natural balance. It nods to the humanism and man in relation to nature, especially the earthly square and the divine circle. And again, here on the left, we have the Assumption of the Virgin in Parma, Italy. This is a ceiling fresco, and we could see the Virgin lifting upwards with a spiral of angels around them. And the light in the center is to represent Jesus Christ. And on the right here, we have David, Michelangelo's statue. And this is a 17-foot tall statue, and it is David facing Goliath. This is more the moments before the battle and not after. We could see those Roman copies with the tree trunks at the bottom to hold the statue up, and we have the Greek style of the long arms, big hands, and more muscular features. And here we have one of probably the most known pieces from the Renaissance area, and this is the Mona Lisa. And this is, of course, by Leonardo da Vinci. It's one of his most famous paintings, and she's a woman of ordinary status. We don't really know much about her, but that makes us want to know more about her. There's incredible realism here in the understanding of human anatomy, like her hands and the nose in ratio to her face. There's a lot of depth and dimension in the background, and this piece is layered upon layered of clear layers that have a little bit of tint to them to create that depth. The Mona Lisa was stolen once from Paris, France. And here we have the end of the Renaissance. It is argued to be caused by several factors by many philosophers. By the end of the 15th century, wars plagued the Italian peninsula and it caused instabilities. An economic demise was caused by the trade routes changing, and this brought limited amounts of money that the wealthy individuals could spend on art. In 1545, the Council of Trent established the Roman Inquisition, which made humanism and any other views that went against the Catholic Church punishable by death. It is said by the early 17th century the Renaissance movement had completely died out, which gave way to the Age of Enlightenment.